Hello and welcome to Resident Mind. Today's video is really a second part or a follow-up from a previous video where I talked about my journey from atheism through the New Age movement and all the way into Christianity. And in that video I mentioned that the day that I accepted Jesus, the day that I asked for forgiveness, was very powerful and had sort of a supernatural type aspect to it. And I said if enough of you wanted to hear that story, I'd share it with you. And I've had so many emails and private messages that I knew I had to make this video. And I thought, well, what better place to do it than right where it happened, right here. And this is just a little cemetery. It's about half a mile to a mile from my home. And, you know, this story, it's not really long. It's not complex. It doesn't have a bunch of twists and turns to it or anything like that. But it was a very powerful moment in my life. And the day that it happened, it was just like any other day. It was a typical day. I wasn't planning on doing this, but I was driving home in the afternoon. And the road that leads to the cemetery, it's just a little gravel dirt road. And as I approached this road, right at the last second, something made me turn my wheel, and I turned down this road. And I distinctly remember thinking to myself, why am I doing this? Why am I turning down this road? It seemed rather odd because I'd never been down that road before. I'd never been to the cemetery before. I have no ties to it at all. So it seemed a little strange, but I pulled into the cemetery and I got out of my car and I just started to walk around a little bit. And as I'm walking around, I had sort of an instinctual gut feeling. At that moment, I knew why I was here. And in the back of the cemetery, there's this cross that you see behind me, and I walked up to it. And as I approached this cross, all of a sudden I was overcome by emotion, just really intense emotion. And it wasn't negative, it wasn't sadness or anything like that. It was very peaceful and very loving, but so intense that I couldn't control it. And my eyes started to well up, and right at that moment I spontaneously began to ask for forgiveness. And this is where it becomes a little strange, a little supernatural in a way. And as soon as I started that process, asking for forgiveness, two deer walked out of the woods right behind the cross here, and they walked up to the cross and they're looking right at me. Now, seeing deer in my area is not unusual. I mean, you can't drive down the road without seeing one. They're in my backyard all the time. So it's nothing unusual. But there was something different about these two deer. And again, it was an instinctual, almost gut level feeling that I knew why they were here. That these two deer were witnesses to what I was about to do. And they're just sitting there watching me. And I just continue on with this process. I'm repenting for my sins. I'm asking for forgiveness. And this is where the second part comes in. I drop to my knees right in front of those stones. And that day there's a thick blanket of pine needles at the base of the cross. And just like when I turned down the road, I didn't know why I was doing it. Well, I didn't know I was going to do this either, but I'm looking at these pine needles and I plunge my hands into them. And as soon as I plunge my hands into these pine needles, I accept Jesus as my Savior. I say it out loud. And I'm plunging my hands into these pine needles, and I didn't know, but underneath there's a broken piece of glass. And I think it was from a vase or something that somebody had flowers in. And it sliced my hand open. And it was rather deep, almost to the bone. But it didn't slow me down at all. I pulled my hands out, and there's blood running down my hands. There's blood running down my arm. It's dripping all over these pine needles. So here I am, bleeding at the foot of the cross. These two deer, rather close, just watching me. I'm repenting for my sins. I'm asking for forgiveness. And I'm accepting Jesus. It was a very powerful moment. And as soon as I accepted Jesus into my heart, that's when the emotions started to subside. They were under control again. And I stood up slowly, and I looked up at the cross, and I looked at these two deer, and they're looking at me, and there was this sense of completion that it was done. And these deer, they just slowly turned around and just walked into the woods again. And I walked back to my car, and I wrapped my hand up and in a towel, and I just stayed here for a little bit. And it was so peaceful and so quiet. And I just knew from that moment on that my life was never going to be the same. And it hasn't been. But after hearing that, I want you to remember one thing. It's very important that, this is my story. It's unique to me. And, your story, your experience is going to be unique to you. Because God knows us better than we know ourselves. He's going to provide us with the experience that we need. He's the one that made me turn that wheel at the last minute and drive down to this cemetery. I didn't even know what I was doing that day. It came out of nowhere. But He knew that that was the perfect day, the perfect time, the perfect experience to push me to open me up to that narrow road that follows His Word. So that's what I needed, and He's going to provide you exactly what you need. And it doesn't have to be like this. It can be very simple. It can be very private. It could be in your bedroom. It could be in your living room. It could be out in your backyard. It could be anywhere. But just know this, that it's going to be unique to you. So don't listen to my story or somebody else's story and think to yourself, well, boy, their experience seems better than mine. Maybe they're closer to God than I am. Maybe they're better at this than I am. No, don't do that. Your experience is going to be unique to you, and it's going to be just as powerful for you. So just remember that. In the times that we're living in, it's more important than ever to get our house in order. I've said in a previous video that God is always reaching out to us, but it's up to us to take His hand, to walk in His grace. And more importantly, just pray for those that don't see. And moving forward, this YouTube channel, if you've followed me for any period of time, you can see that it's changed, right? And I'm going to be talking more about these teachings from the Bible. I'm going to be talking more about current events, things that are happening in our lives, in our world, and how it relates to us spiritually. So if you like these type of videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because I have so many things planned, so many more things coming. And make sure you check out my Rumble account as well, because there's so many things you can't post here on YouTube because of the censorship. So I'll have the link in the description area below for that as well. So I hope to see you soon. And until next time, stay safe and God bless.